Councillor Mrs Jones the nod to start the meeting. Okay, if you bear with me a moment, please.
Hi, Paul. Helps, doesn't it?
Okay, Chair, the live stream has started. We're okay to start the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, thanks very much. Ready to start when you are. Right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Councillor Doris Jones. I'm the Chair of the Planning Application Committee. For the benefit of members of the public, I will make necessary introductions, and I would appreciate if each person would show their hands as I mention you. We've got Mr. Dave Coates, who is Head of Planning, Development and Environment. Hey there, Dave. Right. Lisa Hutchinson. Lisa is our Principal Planning Officer. Lisa. And then Mr. Andrew Errington is the Council's Planning and Governance Lawyer. Andrew, thank you. And Mr. Paul Dalton is Democratic Service Officer, and Paul's role is to take note of the meeting and the votings and the necessary amendment. And then there's the elected members. If you could all please show who you are, if you can raise your hand one way or another. The elected members are the people who will be voting on each application, and it is their vote that counts. As the chair, my role is to maintain order at the meeting, ensure the meeting proceeds in accordance with the council's planning protocol, and in the event of any vote being tied on any matter, I will take the casting vote. Before we start the meeting, I think I should also add that on the planning applications, we have 3, and 21 Barmpton Lane has been withdrawn from today's committee meeting, and it will come back at a later date. Thank you. Paul, are we attendance? Do you want to do a roll call, and are there any absences today?
No problem, Chair. I'll go through, and as we've done in previous meetings, I'll do a roll call. If members can just unmute their microphone, confirm their attendance at the meeting, and then mute their microphone once again for me, that would be wonderful. Thank you. So, Councillor Allen.
Here. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clark.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Cousins.
Present, Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Heslop.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, I have received apologies from Councillor Charles Johnson, so I've noted those. Councillor Mrs Jones.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Councillor Keir.
Hi, Paul. I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lister.
Here.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Marshall.
Hi, Paul. I'm here.
Hi, Councillor. Thank you very much. Councillor McCollum.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dalton.
And good afternoon, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Tate.
Afternoon, Paul. I'm also here.
Hi, Councillor. Thank you very much. Councillor Tosterman.
Here, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Wallace.
Present.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, Chair, just Councillor Johnson's apologies to report. Other than that, we have a full complement of members. Thank you.
Get used to this in the end. Can I have an approval from everybody to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of November? All in agreement? No comments? Thank you. That takes us to Mr. Andrew Harrington, who will take us through the procedures, the Assistant Director of Law for the meeting. Please, Andrew.
Apologies, Chair. We seem to have missed item number 2, declarations of interest.
Oh, declarations of interest on any items, anybody?
No.
Thank you for that, Paul. Thank you. Right, Mr. Andrew Errington, can you take us through procedures, please?
Will do, Chair. Thank you. We begin each item with the Planning Officer presenting their report. That will include any further representations which have been received from supporters or objectors subsequent to those referred to. Then any ward councillor in attendance may address the meeting. Members may then ask questions of the applicants and/or agents if they're in attendance. And this is an opportunity for members to seek clarification on facts rather than for the applicant or agent to make a presentation. The planning officer will then summarise the key planning issues and will take questions from members. Planning officer will be then invited to make any final comments. We then move on to members discussing the matter and putting forward a motion or motions on which to vote and taking a vote and making a decision. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andrew. That takes us to item 5, planning applications. And the first planning application is land at Middleton Road, Middleton St George, Sadberge. Who's taking us through that?
Thanks very much, Chair. I think C. Martin Thrumble is trying to get into the meeting, folks, who's the agent for this particular application. I just wonder if that can occur, please, before I start.
Yes, Dave, I'll attend to that. It wasn't the name I was provided, so we have been rejecting the application from to join the meeting. But if he tries again, we'll admit him.
Okay. Do you want me to just hang fire because obviously as the agent?
Should. Yes.
Yeah. No problem, Dave. I'll confirm once Martin's in the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Is he attending in place of Pamela McCormick? Okay. This guy.
Someone's got a hand up, Chair.
Councillor Allen, I see your hands up.
Yes, Chair. While we're waiting, may I ask a question of Mr. Coates regarding the withdrawn item? It's more of a technical issue, and it'll just save me trying to ask it in between other things, if that's okay.
Mr. Coates.
Thanks, Chair. Happy to do that, Councillor Allen. It's the report is before members, and obviously the Chair has said we're not hearing it today, and I can't discuss any detail as a result of that because it's not on the list. But I've actually requested that it was taken from Planning Committee today because I wanted to look at the recommendation again. I'd rather put forward a more robust recommendation to members, which I will hopefully do next time around. But I just wanted the opportunity to revisit it and have a look at it on site personally before we brought it back to members.
My question, Mr. Coates, was purely going to be on the the outline consent as opposed to what will ultimately possibly be a full application. All I wanted to know was, I appreciate that we don't have any legal reasons to not approve an outline, but do we have any control over when any possible development may take place, bearing in mind what you say in paragraph 10 about already having sufficient housing stock?
Chair, on a point of order, is it in order to be discussing something that isn't on the agenda anymore? I think these are questions for another time.
I agree with you, Councillor Lister. Councillor Allen, can you leave your questions till it's ready to come to committee? Okay.
Okay, it was merely a technical point. It wasn't on this particular application. It was merely a question of what happens between outline and full. That was only my question. That's fine. I'll put it to Mr. Coates privately.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Allen.
Sorry, Chair, I can just confirm that Mr. Thrumble is now actually in attendance at the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, Paul, can we begin, please? Dave.
Thanks very much, Chair. Mr. Trumble's now in the meeting. That's great. This application relates to an extant or an existing planning permission just on the south side of Sadberge for 25 houses. Nothing will change as a result of this particular application in terms of the housing layout or what it looks like, or the scale of it or its layout. That is done already based on the planning permission which has already been granted. This application is a Section 73 application which seeks to vary certain elements of it. If you could just move to the next slide, please, Mike. That's the site. You'll see the A66 on the southern part of the slide, and the main village to the north. You also see that green line which strikes through the middle of the site. The northern part of the site is within the conservation area, and the southern part of the site is outside. The purpose of this particular application then is to revisit a particular condition, which is effectively condition number 2 and number 16, where there's a requirement to construct a footpath linking this part of the site in a northerly direction to provide pedestrian linkage to the main village. Now, that hasn't been possible. When further consideration is being given to this particular part of the proposal, it's physically impossible to get a footpath through there, an adoptable footpath along that eastern edge of Middleton Road, which would run effectively along the frontage of the site where it's adjacent to the road. There's not enough highway land, and there is some quite dramatic changes in levels. It would involve putting steps in and all sorts of things. So in terms of an adopted footpath, which is suitable for wheelchair users and people with pushchairs and the like, it would be a useless adoptable footpath. So as an alternative, incidentally, there are also some services in that area which would be incredibly difficult, to say the least, to move. So as an alternative, next slide please, Mike. That's a clearer picture of the site in the context of the area, and it shows there are 3 objections to the site, including the parish council. Thank you. You can see the 2 red triangles there, which is some way distant from the site itself, and of course there's a parish council objection, which I'll come on to in a moment. Thanks, Mike. That's a picture looking northwards towards the village. And the next one, Mike. And that's the changes proposed. You'll see the substantive permission to the right, which is under construction now, doesn't change at all, as I've hinted at in the early part of the presentation. You'll see in yellow there's what's called a postal path. Now, a postal path is effectively just giving access to the front part of those dwellings. It could be a postman who walks up and down there, but it could be residents as well, to give access to that part of the properties. Importantly, however, what I would wish to point out, it doesn't form an effective link to the northern part of the site and where it adjoins Sadberge village itself. So through negotiation, as an alternative, bearing in mind we can't get an adoptable footpath through where that green line is, there's an alternative here for traffic calming. And you'll see to the northern part of the slide, you'll see a sleeping policeman, for a want of a better phrase, and some highway design work which narrows that. It gives priority for vehicles coming one way and then another. That's not dissimilar to what members, I'm sure, have seen outside Hummers Not School, which works quite effectively. As far as pedestrians are concerned, having slowed the traffic down, there is 2 crossing points you'll see marked with red arrows towards the bottom of the screen, and certainly somebody coming out of the the new estate on the access road on the footpath would be guided to those 2 crossing points, which guides us to a footpath, an existing footpath on the opposite side of the road. So pedestrians, should they wish to leave the site on foot, would cross at those 2 points and travel northwards into Sadburge Village on an existing footpath arrangement. As I say, there has been 2 letters of objection. You'll see on the previous slide where those people have come from, and there was also an objection from Sadburge Parish Council, who had concerns about connectivity to the village, and their concerns certainly related to the postal footpath, which you'll see is that yellow line going northwards, which doesn't have any connectivity to the main village. It provides access to the front of those properties and no more. The alternative additional provision is those 2 crossing points where residents, pedestrians, will be invited to cross there where it's safe, where traffic calming measures are in place, onto the western side of the road and proceed in a northerly direction towards the village itself. That's it in broad terms, Chair. In an ideal world, the existing footpath arrangement or the proposed footpath arrangement in the original scheme would have been the best way forward here, but it would be only of any real value if it could be built to an adoptable standard. And because of the existence of services and because of land level changes, it would involve the construction of steps within that particular footpath as originally proposed, which wouldn't be adoptable, nor would it be any use for anybody with disabilities or pushing a wheelchair. So the alternative as part of this application is to provide those crossing points as indicated on that particular slide, and the management of traffic, which you'll see at the top end of that slide, which is a narrower road, some priority arrangements and a sleeping policeman. We have spoken to obviously our highways engineers who have agreed this in principle. This would be finally agreed as part of the section 21278 highway agreement, but this is a negotiated position. The police we've also consulted, and they are supportive of these particular measures in terms of highway safety. The recommendation, Chair, is to grant planning permission for that alternative footpath and crossing arrangement to facilitate pedestrian linkages from this development northwards into Sadburge Village. Many thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, you're on mute.
We've lost you, Doris.
I'm back. Thank you very much. As the ward councillor, as I say, I've not discussed this with the parish in any shape or form for the legalities of the fact that I'm the chair, so I'm not aware of the parish's views on this. I can, having read this report though, accept their views on the traffic issues. That road is an absolute rat run, and I know that Brian and Lisa and Deborah between them have done a lot with the highway people and Casey, as well as the police on there. So I think that funding from this development to make permanent improvements on that stretch of road, which is used by Uncle Tom Cobley and all coming from Sedgefield and all over the place to get up there to get through the village to get to Middleton and Yarm and so on. So it is a busy road. It is a very busy road and something seriously needs to be done. And I'm pleased to see that Highways have looked at it and are happy because they're aware of the problems on there. And I do look forward to seeing some major improvements on that stretch of road past there. So thank you very much for that. I would like to invite members of the committee, if they have any questions and questions of a technical nature, to ask of the applicant or the agent, but the agent or the applicant cannot do a presentation on this. They can only answer your questions. Any questions to the applicant or the agent from members, please? None? Thank you very much.
Hang
Officer.
on. Councillor Lee.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Councillor
Yes,
Lee, right,
me.
sorry, I see your hand.
Thank you. The first one is a comment, really, which is disappointing that this particular problem has been found now, Chair, and it wasn't actually put forward at the original application way back when 2000 and whenever. But the other question really is a question going back onto your question of safety. From the map, from the drawing that was put on the screen there, it appeared to be the southern end of the development, which, if it is so, it means that the people living closer to Sadberge and therefore the northern end will have to walk down the hill safely to get to those crossing points. And I'm just wondering how practical that is, because the tendency will be, surely, is for those people beyond the traffic calming measure to zip straight across the road and therefore put them potentially in, let's say, a more dangerous position, given your point on the speed and the volume of traffic flying down there.
Mr. Coates, do you want to answer Councillor Lee's question, please?
Yeah, of course, Chair. Yeah, that is an agreed position with our highways officers, Councillor Lee, and the police. I do accept that somebody coming from the northern part of the village down towards the mouth of the housing estate would be tempted, I would guess, to cross. I understand that, but the provision is very clear. It's there for all to use. And if somebody's tempted to do things, it's not something we can legislate for, I would suggest.
Well, just to follow up that, David, why not put one of those crossing points to the north of the traffic calming, and at least it'll give them, there must be a reason for that, I appreciate that, but for the life of me, I can't see why not. Because that's what will happen. People won't want to walk, even in the sunshiny weather, let alone this cold, miserable stuff we're having at the moment, to walk from the top of the estate down the hill, cross the road, to come back up again. It seems a little impractical. Nature being as it is, we'll cut straight across.
So through you, Chair, for me, it's a fair point you're making, Councillor Lee. I understand where you're coming from. The difficulty, I think, is because of the terrain and land levels. The very reason. Can you put that back on, Mike, please? Because of the land levels in that where we anticipated the footpath to go, it's physically impossible to get anything in there which is adoptable. So if you were to put a crossing somewhere north of the top of the slide, you'd still have the problem of how on earth do you get back down to the southern, where the access to the housing estate is, with a suitable surface, which doesn't include steps and other inclines. So whichever way you looked at it, it wouldn't be an adoptable surface that we could provide. The whole purpose of having the variation, because we can't do that path northwards on the eastern side, is this alternative where we're asking people to cross the road and move on the footpath on the western side of the road.
Thank you, Deb. Councillor Toscafin.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, my comment was really pretty much the same as Councillor Lee's, in the fact that this should have actually been very evident when this application was put forward the first time, and it's disappointing that this wasn't discussed at the time. I mean, I think the new arrangement is a good one, but I'm also conscious of the fact that people will walk down that grass verge on the other side anyway, because it is quite wide. It's not wide enough for the footpath, as you say, but it's still a walkable surface. However, with the traffic calming, perhaps that might be a little bit safer than it is at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, it's much in the same vein as the first two questions. David, it's I'm a bit confused. The parish have put in an objection. Does this new setup, do the parish council still have an objection, or do they think that this is suffice? I don't know. I'm trying to understand if the parish council are now saying, if the parish council are still objecting after having seen these plans.
I've got to say I'm not aware of the parish asking to speak, otherwise I would have happily brought them in. Mr. Coates.
Yeah, from my understanding, Councillor Keir, the parish council haven't formally commented on this part of the scheme because their original concerns didn't take this into account. The parish council, as you see there, the points they've raised at the bottom of page 9, there were certain assumptions made with this postal path, which is the yellow line, not having any connectivity to the southern part of Sadberge, and it doesn't. I want to make that clear. It was never intended for that purpose, simply because we can't get an adopted path in that area. This was an alternative, and it's the only alternative really for connectivity to the northern part of the site. But sorry, go on.
Yeah, thank you for that. I didn't know if I didn't understand if that objection was as it was or as it is. But I think Councillor Lee's point's a valid point. If people want to, they'll just scurry down that top northern end and cut across. I think that's and if it's not adoptable, what does that mean legally? If it's not adoptable, does that mean that the council doesn't put anything there, so it's not responsible? Or if they put stairs there, are they not allowed to put stairs there because it's inequitable? And I'm just trying to understand, what provisions could be done up there, because people will, if they're in that northern part, they'll probably, particularly younger people who are fit and capable, they'll scurry down there and they'll walk up. And irrespective of how much we try and no legislate for it, I'm just trying to understand what the council could do there.
Through you, Chair. I think that the whole purpose, Councillor Keir, is to have a safe, adoptable footpath, which performs a link. Which is level and it can be used by all. What we can't get involved in, for obvious reasons, is a unsatisfactory footpath which has all sorts of level changes. I do accept the best place for it would be on the eastern side of that road. I get that, but because of the land level changes, it's physically impossible to do that, and therefore it would involve steps. It become unadoptable and pretty well useless, and not something the council can take any responsibility for. So this is an alternative which takes us onto a flat surface is clearly the better one in my view.
Thank you, Mr. Coates. Councillor Toscovin, have you questions of the agent or the applicant, please?
Yes, in terms of the fact that whilst the traffic calming may be a solution in one hand, it is going to cause another problem on the other hand, because there's, as you say, Councillor Jones, there's an awful lot of traffic that goes up and down there in the morning and the evening, and the queues are going to be extensive, which isn't ideal.
Thank you, Councillor Toscovin. Councillor Tate. Mr. Crumble, I'm aware that you got your hand up to speak, but I'll take all members' questions first, and then I will bring you in purely to answer any of those questions if you want to add to them. But please, no presentation on the subject. Councillor Tate.
Thank you, Chair. It's not really a question, it's just a bit of a comment based on something Dave's just said. If this really is the only alternative, then we haven't really got any options. So, like, as a committee, we not really. It is going to be a case of yes or no, because there isn't any more alternatives to be able to do in this stretch of area to secure the path, if that makes sense. So I'm a bit stuck, as in like, just that was my comment. That's all. If there's no alternatives, there's options, and I'm not really sure what else we can do or discuss.
Dave.
Through you, Chair, if I may ask Councillor Tate. That's a fair point, Councillor Tate. In an ideal world, what we were setting out to do or secure when the planning permission was granted is a safe and usable, adoptable connectivity to the northern part of the village from the access to this site. Because of the land level changes and other services in the area, that hasn't proved to be possible. This is an alternative, Councillor Tate, which makes that provision. So to answer your question, are there any other alternatives? I suppose there are, in that we don't have any connectivity to the village at all, because it's certainly not going to be possible from the eastern side of the road. So that would be a possibility, but my suggestion to members is that we don't take that route, and we take the one that's before us, which provides a flat surface on the western side of the road. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, have you any points to make to the agent, please?
Well, yes. One in respect of the parish council, or a comment of the parish council, who said welcome of an installation of a chicane to slow traffic. I think from my own experience, where we've had chicanes built into the Hannington and Connerscliff ward, I do feel that what's being proposed here is better than a chicane, because people simply get used to it and just whip round it as if they're on a racetrack. So I think I agree with that one. The other one is a question, really, which has Councillor Tate and David has just confirmed that there's nothing else on the table, and we have nowhere to move. But given that the land falls away from the postal path down to the road, and it's difficult, well, it's not difficult, it's impossible to know what height variation there is between the postal footpath and the road, and similarly how far the postal path is from the road. But if the gradient of this height variation is so great, should we not be putting some form of barrier there to literally stop people taking that shortcut and to avoid coming down postal path towards the crossing points? As I say, I'm just surmising what's there. It does seem to be that the height variation might be quite severe, in which case if people did try and tumble down there, they could literally fall down there, end up on the road. But I only say that because there are no dimensions for me to say anything else. So what I'm saying is there would it be sensible to put some kind of physical barrier to stop people even attempting to get down onto the side of the road to, as far as the council and the developer are concerned, at least to take that responsibility to show that we are trying to get people to walk down the postal path and use the proper crossing points.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I think at this point I will bring Mr. Thumble, the agent, in and see if he can answer us to the questions only, though, Mr. Thumble, not a presentation, please.
Hi all, Councillor Lee. First point is the postal footpath is lower than the road, and the gradient would only be changed if we were proposing to put a footpath against there, which we couldn't do because of the existing services that are there. The existing gradient that's there now will remain unchanged as it is now, so the risk is negated in that it is as existing. The other question I believe we had was on why this wasn't picked up originally, and the only thing I can say on that as applicant is when we bought the site, it already had planning permission, so that principle was already established. It then became apparent when we did due diligence further down the line that there was actually an issue with having the path tied up against Middleton Road. I think that answers the two main questions that were had, but if there's anything else, please let us know.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Trumbull. I think we've exhausted the questions too that the architect could answer, so I'm going to go now to Mr. Coates to summarise, please. Dave.
Thank you, Chair. In a nutshell, really, we do have a planning permission which was granted some time ago for these houses. This application doesn't seek to change any of that. The development is underway. What it seeks to vary is an alternative way of providing a safe and sustainable link back to the village to the north. The possibility of having it as originally anticipated on the eastern side of Middleton Lane is not possible because of land level changes, and it's certainly not an adoptable route, a safe route that could be used by everyone. The alternative to that is to have traffic calming measures, is to install crossing points, or points where residents or members of the public can cross the road safely in conjunction with the traffic calming measures, onto the western side of the road to an existing footpath and northwards towards the village itself. I accept that in an ideal world, that the perfect solution would have been to have something on the eastern side of the road. That's physically not possible, and it's certainly not adoptable. And the second best way of looking at this is inviting people to cross the road in conjunction with traffic calming and use an existing flat surface. It's not just about, I do appreciate in what Councillor Keir said, that the temptation of people jumping across, more able-bodied people at a northernmost point. But I think what we need to do here, we can't legislate for that. What we can do, however, is ensure we make that connectivity suitable and able to be used by everyone. And the best way of doing that in the circumstances that we have is to provide those crossing points to a flat and usable surface on the western side of the road. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to invite members if you have any questions of the planning officer before we move to final comments. Councillor Allen, the answer.
Thank you, Chair. Without wanting to put Mr. Coates on the spot, I just wondered if he could clarify. He's used the word adoptable on many occasions, and for the viewers from YouTube who may not be conversant with planning terms, could he clarify what adoptable actually means? Thank you.
Certainly, Councillor. I think Arthur Howson, my colleague, may well be in the meeting. Is that correct? Hello, Arthur. I wonder if I can invite you in as our highway engineer to answer Councillor Aaron's point.
Yeah, of course, Dave. Yeah, adoptable essentially means highway that's maintainable at public expense, and that everyone has a right to pass and repass. So it's there for the use of everyone. However, to gain highway status, it has to meet fairly stringent design criteria, including gradients. So the key thing for that would be, in this location, there's the technical difficulties building it to provide access, direct access from an adoptable footpath would require steps, and we don't allow steps within the adopted highway. Obviously, they're not good for people with physical or visual impairment. They do cause problems, so that's been the key thing here as well. And another point I'd like to make about this is that if we had installed this path alongside Middleton Road, it would never have provided a direct route to the north of the village onto the lack of land, because private gardens extend as far as the highway. So it would always, in essence, have been a path to nowhere. But hopefully that answers the question of what adoptable is. Thank you.
It does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Tate. Councillor Tate.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't got any further questions. I'd just like to move the officer's recommendation, please, that we accept it.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. I think Councillor Lee has his hand up. Councillor Lee, before we go to the vote, have you any more to say, please?
Yes, I would, Chair. Thank you very much for that. Just a brief one. But the point is that there are several councillors expressed their concern that people, any person could actually still run across that road, which I would suggest is very feasible. Therefore, if there is concern that should happen, surely we should be putting some kind of physical barrier to try and encourage them not to do that and direct them down to the postal path. I mean, it has become clear that there are certain councillors on this committee who are concerned that people could rush across that road. So, as an authority, what's to stop us putting a condition there that there is a physical barrier in the form of a presentable fence put down there?
Sorry, I've lost my sound again. Mr. Crumble, would you like to answer that, please? Where is he? Mr. Thumble?
Yeah, I'm here. I think you're talking about putting a fence alongside Middleton Road, Councillor Lee.
Well, I don't know. Forgive me. I don't know the name of the roads, but the problem I can foresee, and it's been supported by other councillors, that people at the north end of the estate could and possibly would simply come out of the houses, whip over the postal path, and cut across the road as close up to the village as possible, to save them having to walk all the way back down, to walk all the way back up. I think that's human nature, whether you're young or old, is to take the shortest route between A and B, and to have to walk down from the top end of the estate down to the bottom end, cross the road, and then walk because that is a hill, walking all the way back up the hill to get into the centre of Sadberge. And given that the reality is people will tend to cross where they can, surely it makes sense to put some form of barrier in the form of a nice, neat handrail across there to try and at least direct them down onto the postal footpath, because people will cross there.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I'm going to bring Arthur Howson in to do the final summing up and question on highways, because I think it's been well and truly heard. Mr. Howson, you're our expert on highways, engineers and roads, so we do depend very much on your advice, and I think members should listen to that advice carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I wouldn't have any objection to Councillor Lee's suggestion. I think it's reasonable if the applicant is agreeable to that, but I think that fence should be located off the highway and within the land controlled by the developer. I think the key point is that the development does have pedestrian connectivity with the village. It provides betterment in that there are two crossing points immediately site entrance, and in the wider off-site highway schemes, we're actually extending the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit outwards, so that will encompass the full frontage of the development. We've liaised with the police at an early stage about this, and they were very much in favour of having the gateway feature, the priority feature, to control traffic speeds. It is a known speeding point, and as the chair's pointed out, it is a busy route for commuters, so the police are very much in support of that, and they're actually optimistic that it could end their enforcement days there in terms of speed. So I think they're the key points, really. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Howson. Councillor Toscovin, I see that you have your hand up again. Councillor Toscovin, you're on mute.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say I agree with Councillor Lee that would be a good idea. I've listened to what Mr. Howson has to say, and I just wonder whether it is possible to put that railing, which is being proposed, on the actual land that's owned by the developer, because it would still leave a wide band of land which is presumably owned by Darlington Borough Council, which would still be an opportunity for people to walk outside of that fenced area. So I would propose that it was put far more closely to the roadside. That's my only comment.
Thank you. I'm going to bring Mr. Coates in again on that one. Mr. Coates.
He's on mute now.
You're on mute.
There we go. It was just to come back at the very end, if I may, Chair, having finalised what members want to do in terms of the fence. It was just something I want to add beyond that. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Lister, you've got your hand up.
Yes, sorry. It's just I'm getting a bit confused because it has been moved and seconded that the officers.
I'm sorry, Councillor Lister, I can't hear you.
This thing right. It's been moved and seconded.
Yes.
That the officers' recommendations are taking. So all this would have to be in the form of an amendment, I presume.
Well, if somebody wishes to move all of those, well, yes, exactly, you're right, Councillor Lister.
That's sort of prompting.
Yes, okay. Well, look, I think everybody's had an opportunity to ask all the questions they want to ask, unless there's anything that's not already been answered and discussed. Is there anything new on this application that anybody wishes to put forward? Right, Mr. Coates, will you sum up then, please?
Just hang on a sec. Are you asking for?
Thumble's got his hand
Sorry, can I put the amendment that we accept the officer's recommendation subject to an additional condition whereby a physical barrier is put down the length of that housing estate to prevent access onto the main road?
You can, but I think Mr. Coates, the planning officer, wants to sum everything up first, and then we'll take the amendments and the motions.
Thank you.
Doris, Mr. Thumble's got his hand up.
Yes, but unless Mr. Thumble, you can only answer questions. You cannot do a presentation.
No, I just want to answer on the fences that there's a major point I think that Mr. Coates made earlier, which is regarding the existing services. The reason we can't put a physical barrier along there is there's an existing NWL rising main, which sits in between the path and the existing, back of curb line. So to enable to put a physical barrier in, would have to seek NWL approval, which at the moment they would not allow anybody to put a physical barrier in the ground next to their existing asset.
Very valid point, Mr. Coates. What's your view on that? Dave?
Hello, thank you, Chair. I mean, clearly members are expressing a particular view here, looking at the potential human behaviour in seeking to wander down the wrong side of the road. I would urge members to think fairly carefully about that particular position, because I suppose we can't actually legislate for what people will do or what people are likely to do. I think what we need to do in our deliberations here is to make proper provision for an access which is a sustainable one and usable by all. And that's what I would suggest is our responsibility today. And whilst there is, in an ideal world, we would have that usable access for all on the eastern side of the road, the reasons we've given that's not actually possible. And that's the purpose of this particular application here. And I think we would have discharged our responsibilities correctly if we were to consider this application favourably, because quite rightly it does make provision for that sustainable link for everybody to cross the road and move northwards towards the village. To actually introduce another element to this, just because somebody may be tempted or behave badly or whatever, I don't think it's a sustainable way forward as far as our planning considerations go. And I would urge members to look quite carefully at the alternative we have, which is something I think is it works, and it does take into account everybody who may use the footpath northwards to the village itself, whereas making provision for something on the right-hand side or whatever doesn't fully take that into account, and it does exclude other people who may be disabled or wheelchair users or children. I think we should just stick to what we have responsibility for, and not trying to second guess what the bad behaviour of others might be. Thanks, Chair.
It's a case of you're damned if you do and we're damned if we don't. It's very difficult to know how people are going to respond. Councillor Lee, Mr. Thumble, first of all, are you saying that it is not practical because of Northumbrian Water's pipes to put the railing that Councillor Lee is requesting along that footpath?
Yes.
Can it not be done? Is that what you're saying?
It potentially could be done, but it would need in-depth discussion with NWL, and the depth of the main is so shallow that it's likely to clash with any concrete fence post that was put in.
Right. Councillor Lee, do you still wish to keep that into your amendment?
I do. I think it's not beyond the wit of an engineer to find some solution to bring it inboard, bring it outboard, to avoid that, for heaven's sake. And as far as, with the greatest respect to Mr. Coates, I do appreciate what you're saying, but human nature being it's human nature, and I think the experience to every councillor listening to all this knows full well that people will cross north of there, irrespective of what you or what anyone says. Therefore, there is a potential danger. Therefore, what I'm suggesting is we put a rail down there to protect people from themselves. at the end of the day. The last thing I would want to see, it's already been said by the chair, this is a very fast road. And I know from history, Sadberge has done, I don't know how many community speed tests down there, all confirming that the speed and volume of traffic is very, very high. And what we're really doing there by closing our eyes to the potential of people crossing across that road, I think is wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. People will cross the road, and they're crossing it onto a very busy road, and therefore we should look to see how we can prevent people from hurting themselves, and therefore, as the recommendation is at the moment, I would simply have to vote against the officer's recommendation.
I take your point, Councillor Lee, but we all know within our own wards danger areas around schools and housing estates. But, you know, we've got to give people credit for their own intelligence. Children are learning to cross the road safely. We can't legislate the odd person who decides to dash across the road in the wrong place. That's the point. But I fully respect your comments and what you're saying, and it's up to members at the end of the day to decide how they're going to vote. Councillor Allen, have you anything new to bring in, please?
Just a very quickie, although I don't agree with Councillor Lee, because people, in my view, people should be responsible for themselves. We can only go so far within our duty to maintain responsibility for our residents. If a barrier is not physically possible for whatever reason, perhaps a compromise could be a warning sign for pedestrians that it is their responsibility to walk on the recommended path, as it were, or some such similar wording.
All right. Councillor McCollum, have you anything new to ask?
No, thank you, Councillor, though if I can make a point, looking at the amended landscaping plan, there appears to be a hedge that borders the entirety of the property, particularly around the postal path from the northwestern edge. So from the garden of Unit 17 around, there is, I think it says between 40 and 60 centimetres high, so there is some soft landscaping there that serves as a natural barrier. So I understand Councillor's concerns, but to add in additional infrastructure at this point, considering that the entire reason that we're here is because such physical infrastructure is impractical at this point. I think there's something already in place. I think we could be guilty of trying to over-engineer this. I think the proposition serves to tackle not only the problem of connectivity, but it also serves to tackle, as you yourself, Chair, have said, a known traffic problem in that area. So I would suggest that we move forward with the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Mr. Coates, do you want to sum up, please, before we take this to a vote?
You're on mute again.
Thank you, Chair. I think I have summarised as best I'm able where we're at. This is an alternative to what was originally proposed. The reason we're here is to try and find a suitable mechanism for achieving connectivity to the northern part of the village, because the original proposal isn't possible for the reasons that we've rehearsed. I hear what the Councillor Lee has said about personal responsibility, and my view is that there is a degree of personal responsibility which people have to take themselves. We can't impose that on anybody, but I do appreciate Councillor Lee takes a different view. It would be possible to, as part of condition 13 on page 14, because there is an additional submission required, setting out in detail all of those traffic calming measures. But my advice to members would be not to do that, because I think the measures that are in place adequately set out to achieve what we're hoping to do today, and that's provide connectivity, safe connectivity, which is usable by all, to the northern part of the village. And I think that's the whole purpose of that, not to, as Councillor McCullum said, to be seen to be trying to over-engineer a solution here, just because somebody might act irresponsibly. But I do. It's sort of. It's a strange area, this, isn't it? It's personal morals and all the rest of it. But in terms of our discharging our responsibilities from a planning context, I believe the scheme that's before us does what it says on the tin, and it actually ensures that we have made provision for the safe crossing of the road and a flat surface that everybody can use. Just very quickly, Chair, there is a 106 agreement associated with the original application, and whatever members decide to do with that today, it would require this permission, should it be granted, to be reassigned to the 106 agreement, which looks at £30,000 for sustainable transport, and it should in fact have 20% affordable housing. So if members were minded to grant today, it's basically a brand new permission, notwithstanding the fact that there is a permission that's extant. But by granting today, it would have to ensure that this permission is assigned to the existing 106, which is a fairly straightforward thing to do. That's not a problem, but it should just be recognised in the recommendation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And to add to that, I can only say, as ward councillor, believe you me, I've had more than my fair share of developments in the rural areas. I've gone through this with a fine-tooth comb and looked at every possible avenue on it, highways as well as the properties themselves. And I really cannot see how legally I could object to this, as much as I would like to. So I'm going to now move it to Paul Coates, please. Paul Dalton, please, to take the vote, the amendments and motions. Over to you, Paul.
Okay, Chair. The only thing that I'm aware of on the table is the motion that was moved by Councillor Tate and seconded by Councillor Clark, moving off as a recommendation. I know there's been a lot of talk around about an amendment, but there's been nothing formally moved or seconded. So the only vote I'll be taking then at this point will be on the motion as moved by Councillor Tate and seconded by Councillor Clark, and that is that planning permission be granted subject to the 18 conditions outlined on pages 11 to 15 of the submitted report. Okay.
Councillor Lee has his hand up.
Before Councillor Lee does have his hand up. Councillor Lee, did you get your amendment seconded?
Well, you stopped me for going any further because you went back to David. But what I would add is that whilst we are talking about people taking full responsibility and acting very sensibly, can I just draw your attention to, if that is the case, why do we need to narrow the road? Why don't people take
responsibility? I think we've had a motion and an amendment.
Flying down that road.
That's a question, Councillor Lee.
Well,
through.
Councillor Lee, do you want to put an amendment in or not?
Who the hell is that talking? Of course I'm going to put an amendment in, John. That's what I'm trying to do.
Whoa. Councillor Lee.
There's no need to ask me that question. I'm putting forward one. Yes, right. I've already said so, but as you say, you stopped me before. The proposal is that the extra condition is that we do put a physical barrier down there to prevent people running down onto that road.
Thank you. Have you got a seconder for that, Councillor Lee?
No idea.
Anybody second Councillor Lee's amendment, please? Can you show your hand?
I'll second it.
Who's that?
Thank you.
There's no hand up. Councillor Heslop.
Yeah.
You've got a seconder from Councillor Heslop.
Yep.
So Paul Dalton, please, can you take the amendments and the motions, please?
Just to clarify, Chair, do we need some wording around that condition, Dave? Do we need to take an adjournment just to formalise some wording around that?
I don't think so, Paul. As I mentioned earlier on, if members were minded to take on board Councillor Lee's proposal, I think condition 13 can be adequately modified, and all that I would include within that condition 13 on page 14 was to incorporate appropriate fencing on the eastern side of the road. That's the only addition we're talking about. So it'd be condition 13 on page 14, and that wording would to be incorporate fencing, appropriate fencing on the eastern side of Middleton Road. Thank you.
All right. So does your amendment still stand, Councillor Lee, as we're going to include that anyway into the conditions?
Well, are you going to approve it? That was an addition, Chair.
No, I think it's an amendment, Doris, I think.
You're going to keep it as an amendment? All right.
Well, I'll take it if you're going to put it in condition 13. Then there isn't an amendment because it's already included. Sorry.
Paul, can we get on, please, and do the voting?
Through your chair, just very, very quickly. My suggestion now of amending condition number 13 was if members were minded to go down the route of supporting Councillor Lee's proposal.
Right.
That was hopefully I was trying to assist if members went down that route. My advice is that we don't have to do that, but nevertheless there's an amendment on the table and it could be done by amending condition number 13. Thank you.
Over to you, Paul.
Right, okay then, Chair. So the first vote I'm going to take will be on the amendment then, which is the officer recommendation with that amendment to condition 13 to incorporate appropriate fencing on the eastern side of Middleton Road. I think that sums up what Councillor Lee was wanting to move and what Councillor Heslop has seconded. So as usual, we'll just go through the roll call, and if members can indicate whether they are for, against or abstaining on that amendment. Councillor Allen.
Against.
Councillor Clark.
Against.
Councillor Cousins.
Against.
Councillor Heslop.
For.
Councillor Johnson has submitted his apologies. Councillor Mrs Jones.
I've got to go against.
Councillor Keir.
Against.
Councillor Lee.
For.
Councillor Lister.
Against.
Councillor Marshall.
Against.
Councillor McCollum.
Against.
Councillor Tate.
Against.
Councillor Tosterman.
For.
And Councillor Wallace.
Against.
Bear with me a moment, please, councillors. Okay, that's 3 votes for the amendment, 10 votes against the amendment. The amendment has fallen. We revert back to the substantive motion, which was Councillor Tate's motion as seconded by Councillor Clark. And we're now voting on that planning permission is granted subject to the 18 conditions outlined on pages 11 to 15 of the submitted report. So again, members, I'll go through and I'll take a vote if you can indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining on the motion. Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Cousins.
For.
Councillor Heslop.
For.
Councillor Mrs Jones.
For.
Councillor Keir.
For.
Councillor Lee.
Against.
Councillor Lister.
For.
Councillor Marshall.
For.
Councillor McCollum.
For.
Councillor Tate.
For.
Councillor Tosterman.
For.
And Councillor Wallace.
For.
Okay, Chair, the substantive motion is therefore carried. Thank you. You're on mute, Chair.
We've approved the officer's recommendations along with an assignment of the 106 agreement. Okay, thank you. Right, item 5B, please. And I think we've got Mr. Gary Rayner, the architect, in on this one as well. And I'll just say the same to Mr. Rayner, that you're not here to do a presentation. You're here to listen to councillors' questions and answer councillors' questions. So I'm going to invite, is it Dave or Lisa? Lisa? It's not 5B, I beg your pardon. It's 5C. Sorry, folks. I should have took my papers out. 5C. Same applies, but it's 5C, not 5B.
Thank you, Chair. Page 35 on the agenda, 35 Cleveland Avenue. If we can have the first slide, Mike, which I think is slide 16. Thank you. So 35 Cleveland Avenue in the west end of Darlington, as you can see on the site location plan there. And if we can just move on to the next slide, which shows it in a little bit more detail. So it's the property outlined in red there at the southern end of Cleveland Avenue, close to its junction with Cleveland Terrace. The green hatching denotes the extent of the West End Conservation Area, and this property lies just within that. And there are the townhouses on Leconfield directly behind. If we just move to the next slide, please, Michael. So this is just an aerial shot here, and this shows the total of the properties consulted, which was 5, and we have 3 objections from the properties directly behind on Leconfield, and I'll summarise those as we go through the report. And just move on to the next one, thank you. So this is the proposal. It's for the erection of what will be 2 individual brick-built sheds. I think one's to be a workshop and one's to be a summer house, and then it's proposed to erect a pitched roof over both of them to provide a covered seating area in the middle. And then I'm not sure if you can make it out on the plans, but there are 2 sort of personnel gates either side leading to storage areas. So a pitched roof constructed over the buildings with the open storage areas, approximately 14.8 metres in length, and a pitched roof of 3 metres at the ridge. If we could just move on to results of consultation, and they're set out on page 36. So as I mentioned, the properties within the West End Conservation Area. No objections from the council's conservation officer, and we've had 3 objections from the properties on Leconfield, those directly behind, and the comments can be summarised as concern that the structure is closer to the properties on Leconfield than the rear of the property itself. The proposal is not in keeping with the area and is an overdevelopment of the plot. The structure is overbearing and excessive in scale, resulting in loss of light and restrictive views to the properties behind, and concerns about the potential use of the workshop and summer house and noise levels arising from that. We do actually have a further comment, I think, from the occupant of number 8, who has commented previously, and not making any additional comments, but emphasising the points made previously that the height of the building would affect light to the garden in the summer months, and that the positioning of the building, again, resulting in it being closer to their house than the application property, and therefore have a greater impact on their property. So in terms of main issues, there's 2 here. There's the visual impact and the impact on the conservation area, and also residential amenity in relation to the properties to the rear. In terms of the impact on the conservation area, it's located in the rear garden area, and as you can see from the slide to the far right, you can see that there's a boundary wall to the back and side, basically, of the garden. So it's effectively just the roof that will be visible above those boundary walls. So in terms of impact on the conservation area, it really will have a fairly limited impact. There are some limited views from the south from Cleveland Terrace, and some cut-through views from the properties on Leconfield, but from Cleveland Avenue itself, the properties do obscure views in pretty much in its entirety. So the conservation officer is satisfied it would have a neutral impact on the conservation area. It would be effectively very little difference. In terms of its scale and its materials, modest in scale and materials to match, so no impact either on the conservation area or the character and appearance of the surrounding area as a result of that. So turning to residential amenity, if we can just move to the photographs, please, Michael. So that's just a visual, an artist's impression, if you like. And then if we can just move to the next photograph. So the top left is the rear boundary wall at the bottom of the garden of 35 Cleveland Avenue, and you can see the properties behind on Leconfield. The effect of the wall and the proposal is that, again, it will literally be the roof that is visible above the boundary wall, and that will have potentially the most impact on those properties behind. But as it's set out in the report, the limited projection of the pitched roof over the wall means that, it's considered that there's very little impact or very little discernible impact on these properties in terms of loss of light and outlook, such that it would be very difficult to substantiate refusal of the application on this basis. And I would also point out that it's only, I think it's only half a metre higher than what could be built as permitted development. Should the applicant have changed the scheme, they could build a very similar structure of a slightly reduced height in that location over which we would have no control. In terms of the use of the building, it is for ancillary purposes only, and that is a subject of condition 4 on the recommendation. And any noise arising from that sort of ancillary use, should any complainants be minded to do so, could be subject of an investigation through environmental health. It's not for the planning process, if you like, to control how people use their outbuildings for ancillary purposes. People, use them for hobby purposes, for recreation. But if there's any noise arising from that over and above what's considered to be reasonable, then environmental health will be the appropriate recourse in that respect. So the recommendation, Chair, as set out in page 38, is to grant permission subject to 4 conditions. And as I've mentioned, condition 4 at the foot of page 39 requires that to be used for ancillary purposes only. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Members, do you have any questions of the architect, Mr. Adamson, who is here today to answer questions? Councillor Lister, you have your hand up, please.
No, sorry, it was a question for Lisa.
Lisa, do you want to answer that?
Yes,
well, what I wanted to know was on the sort of oblique, the second picture.
Yes, sorry.
You can see a shed and you can see a conservatory. Are we talking about that sort of height for the new development?
Through you, Chair. Sorry, Michael, if we can just go back to the photograph that Councillor Lister was referring to, which I think was the next one.
Back.
No, I think it's 22.
One.
Sorry, 21. My mistake.
It's all right.
There we go. I'll admit that I don't know the height of that garden shed next door. What I would say is that the boundary between the two properties is approximately 2 metres in height. The eaves of the structure is 2.1 metres, and then you have a pitched roof raking away from that boundary, which is a maximum of 3 metres in height. So it's set in slightly, I think approximately 0.4 metres from that rear boundary. It will adjoin the walls either side, but it will be set in from that rear boundary. But a similar sort of roof arrangement. It's that pitch raking away. I don't know the exact height of that shed as a comparison, but I can't imagine it would be significantly taller than that.
Okay, thank you.
Members, any questions to the agent, Mr. Adamson, who is with us? No? Thank you. Can I ask, I see no hands raised, so can I ask anybody? Lisa, do you want to sum up on any of this, please? There are no questions asked by members. Do you want to summarise the planning issues, please?
Well, nothing much further to add, Chair, just that, limited impact or neutral impact on the conservation area, and the limited impact of the roof on the neighbouring properties, particularly those behind on Leconfield, is not considered to be so detrimental to warrant refusal on this occasion.
Okay, Councillor Kay, you've put your hand up last minute.
I have. I'd just like to move the proposal, Chair, if that's okay.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Members don't seem to have any further questions. You've summed up, Lisa, nothing more to say? Nothing more from members? Okay, can I ask Paul, please, if you can take the amendment?
Right, okay, members. So I have Councillor Keir moving the officer recommendation so that planning permission be granted subject to 4 conditions outlined on pages 38 and 39 of the submitted papers. I think I heard Councillor Clark second it, just for my records. So again, I'll just go through, and if you can indicate whether you're for, against, or abstaining on the motion. Councillor Allen, please.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Cousins.
For.
Councillor Heslop.
For.
Councillor Mrs Jones.
For.
Councillor Keir.
For.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lee.
For.
Councillor Lister.
For.
Councillor Marshall.
4.
Councillor McCollum.
4.
Councillor Tate.
4.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tostervin.
4.
And Councillor Wallace.
4.
Thank you. To clarify, Chair, that's been carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you all. That's been approved. Can we now move on to any supplementary items? And there are no many. So are there any questions? Part 1 questions, please, to anybody for the officers? No Part 1 questions? Thank you. There are no Part 2. So that moves us on to Part 3, which is, oh, there are some Part 2, but we just move them on block. No debate. Part 3, I would like to recommend that pursuant to section 100B bracket 5 of the Local Government Act 1972, that the public be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of the ensuing items on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in exclusion para 7 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act. I'll give us a 5-minute break while we clear the YouTube.